Yo, what's up, everyone? This is Terry with College Football Stop, bringing you another show today. Got a lot of stuff to get into, man, like usual. Want to talk a little bit about the NFL, the playoffs, last four teams left. We'll get into some of that. The main topic of the day, which is Jim Harbaugh done at Michigan? There's a lot of smoke that he's going to end up being the next head coach at the Chargers, so we're going to talk about that a little bit. What kind of impact that could have on college football? Obviously, Nick Saban retiring had a big impact. So, I mean, this one could too, but I don't think it'll be as big. But we'll get into that too. And then I want to talk a little bit about Ohio State. I want to talk about what players could potentially be breakout players for Ohio State in the 2024 season. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to start with the NFL. Like I said, um, obviously the last four teams left here, we have the Chiefs versus the Ravens, and then the 49ers versus the Lions. Let me know in the chat or in the comments what you guys think, who is going to be your Super Bowl teams. I'm going to give you guys mine and kind of just a little bit. I don't always follow NFL, but I have been recently. I don't have a team that I even root for in the NFL. Probably might end up being the Houston Texans though, because CJ Stroud, if you watched my show yesterday, I really love what CJ Stroud is doing as a person and as a football player. So let's go ahead and get into it though. So the first game we're going to talk about is the Chiefs versus the Ravens. This game, I mean, I think this is going to be an interesting game because you have Patrick Mahomes, obviously probably the best quarterback in the NFL right now. Legendary quarterback, honestly, already in his career. So, you got to give credit where credit is due. And then the Ravens, which, I mean, looking at Lamar Jackson, I mean, that battle is going to be crazy between those two teams. I'm going to pick the Ravens to win this game. I think the Ravens have the best defense in the NFL. And I think that they're kind of firing on all cylinders right now. And then Lamar Jackson's legs, I think, will be the factor that ultimately will take the Ravens over top of the Chiefs. I'm not going to give a score prediction. Like I said, I don't follow NFL enough to do something like that. But I think the game is also at Baltimore, which that's another factor that you at least have to take into consideration, especially during the playoffs because those stadiums get pretty lit. So anyway, the other game, I think it's the 49ers and the Lions. I don't know how to pick this one. I thought about it a little bit before the show here. The Lions are one of those teams that's kind of firing on all cylinders right now too. Their head coach has got them going in the right direction. So I love what they're doing over there. The 49ers, I think that their defense is going to win out this game. So I got the 49ers winning this game. Ravens versus 49ers in the Super Bowl. And I think that the Ravens will probably end up winning it, but we'll see. We'll talk a little bit about it after this weekend, about the Super Bowl matchup and kind of what we're expecting. But like I said, I don't dive too much into the NFL because I don't know it 100%. But I have been watching a little bit more lately, and based on what I've seen just watching lately, those are the teams that I would pick. I do want to move off of that. Like I said, the NFL is not really my thing. I'm a big time college football fan, and I mean college football is crazy right now, man. So moving on to Jim Harbaugh, kind of the main topic of the show here. There's a lot of smoke that Jim Harbaugh is about to leave Michigan and go join the Los Angeles Chargers. And there's also smoke that he's going to take his defensive coordinator with him. So if that does happen, that would be probably the biggest loss for Michigan. I know that Jim Harbaugh is a culture guy and all that stuff, so that's going to be a big loss for them. But I think Sharon Moore is kind of molded in that same like weirdo culture guy mentality as Jim Harbaugh. And if they were to elevate Sharon Moore, I do think that the culture at Michigan will stay, and I think it'll have some other impacts, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But if Jim Harbaugh does leave and he takes Jesse Minter with him, I think that's going to raise a huge problem for Michigan because, because their defense and what they've been doing recently on defense is really probably the biggest level up that I've seen from them. That defense has been phenomenal. And, I even made I'm quoted talking to my buddy saying that I haven't seen a defense like theirs, like the way that they do things. They're never out of position. They're super aggressive, which is usually when you have a defense that's aggressive, you're gonna have guys out of position sometimes, maybe blow a coverage sometimes, stuff like that. But that doesn't really happen with them, man. I mean, kudos to Jesse Minter. Obviously, I don't know what kind of impact the whole Stallions ball stuff had on Jesse Minter and his coaching abilities, but I think that he's a guy who's from that Baltimore Ravens coaching tree, and I mean, I don't know if I'm just not factoring in any of the cheating allegations, the Stallions ball, and all that, then I have to give credit to Jesse Minter, man. He's been phenomenal for them. If Jim Harbaugh does take Jesse Minter away, though, then that leaves Sharon Moore, who is not a coach who has a ton of coaches under his tree. You know, he's never been a head coach before. That would leave him to hire a defensive coordinator, which if that was the case, I think that Michigan could see a bigger like step back than what they're even expecting, which is already a pretty big step back because of the fact that they're losing so many players. So now, if you look at it from a more broad perspective, though, I talked about in the beginning how Nick Saban leaving Alabama had a huge impact on all of college football. Um, does Jim Harbaugh leaving Michigan have that similar impact on college football with their roster being open for 30 days? I don't know. I think that they'll probably, if this does happen, they'll probably elevate Sharon Moore pretty quickly to the head coaching position, which would hope for them at least would hopefully retain a lot of their players and get them to not leave and enter the portal. Now, if Jesse Minter were to leave, also that kind of raises a different situation with the defense, right? Because I don't think that Sharon Moore being there is going to have too much of an impact on the defensive players at Michigan. So I don't know. It's an interesting situation, and I think that it's going to happen. I would imagine within like the next few days, Jim Harbaugh will probably announce that he's going to the Chargers to take over that job. I don't know. I don't know, man. I think that there will be some fall off from this in terms of like their roster. I do think that some of those guys will leave. I would expect teams like especially Alabama, who just had their roster pillaged, to kind of be waiting for a team like Michigan to come open with their roster so they can go in and take the best players off that roster, or at least try to, because they need kind of a come up after all the guys that they lost. So I don't know. Like I said, let me know in the chat or in the comments what you guys think. Do you think that if do you think Jim Harbaugh will leave for the Chargers? And if he does, do you think that will have a big impact on college football overall and what the rosters look like, the way that Nick Saban leaving Alabama did? All right, let me see here. I'm gonna move on from that. Like I said, I mean, it's just an interesting topic to me. Like the way that college football is right now, you don't want your coach to leave, and if you do, if your coach is leaving, you need to have someone in line to take over that job, because if you don't, then your roster could easily get pillaged. And as an Ohio State fan, that concerns me, because we currently have a coach that's kind of on his last leg, especially with potentially losing to Michigan. Ryan Day lost to Michigan 3 times in a row. If even with this stacked roster, with all the talent that he has this year, if he still lost to Michigan again, I think Ohio State would probably move on from Ryan Day, unless he went on to win the national championship after losing to Michigan. But I don't know, man. If they did, does Ohio State have someone lined up, or would they? And would that person be someone that would keep all these guys on roster? I mean, it's a scary situation, honestly, to lose your head coach. So what I'm hoping for and what I expect is that Ryan Day now has this roster booming. He now has the coaching staff going in the right direction, and we need to go out and beat Michigan and hopefully go on and win the national championship in 2024. It's going to be interesting the way it plays out, because obviously it's a new 12-team playoff, so it's kind of an even playing field. I mean, if you look at it in the past, it's a little different, right? Like if you're a team, let's say like Texas or Washington, those are two teams who never went to the college football playoffs, so they didn't know what to expect going into the college football playoffs. They didn't know the proper way to to prepare for a college football playoff. And other teams like Alabama, Michigan, those teams have been there before. Their coaches know they were able to make mistakes on prepping for the playoffs and learn off of that and get better. Going into this 12-team playoff, it's a lot different. Nobody knows. I feel like you almost have to treat it like a regular season game because it's going to come really fast. You don't have like 30 days to take off for practicing. And then once you get past the first round of the playoffs, you're right to, I think, another game the following week. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I think it'll make for a really good viewing experience, even if there is like blowout games. Um, as long as we don't have too many weekends where all the games are blowout games, I think it'll be fine, right? Like I would imagine that's not going to happen. There'll be at least one or two good games for the first round of games. The second round of games, I would imagine that there'll be at least one really good game, and then you get into the third round of games, and at that point, you're looking at the top teams in the country, so you should be looking at just bangers, And the good thing about that is the first two rounds kind of do the job of the college football playoff committee from the past. So I'm excited to see what the 12-team playoff brings, because, like I said, you look at last year. Ohio State loses one game to Michigan by 6 points. They would have still been in the college football playoffs, and they would have been playing against some of the teams that actually made the college football playoffs. And even teams like Georgia, they lost one game to Alabama. They would have been in the playoffs, and then they would have had their opportunity to beat teams to earn their way into the Final Four. So I ultimately, I do think that the 12-team playoff is going to be better for college football. And honestly, it may cause it may cause it to be where teams don't necessarily two-peat or three-peat or go on like dominant dynastic runs, because you're going to have those one-off teams that maybe would have got left out of the 14 playoff that are actually really good, and it's like their year. They're going to be able to go out there and earn their way into the top four. And then ultimately, once we get to that top four, it would be like a playoff like we're used to right now. So I don't know. I'm excited about it. But we'll see how all this stuff plays out, man. It's a lot of cool stuff going on in college football, and it's crazy because it's the off season and it doesn't feel like the off season. It feels like we got football to watch this weekend, which we obviously have some NFL football, but I don't know, man. I'm excited about the 2024 season, and I know I'm dreading it, but I know that the news and all that stuff is going to die down here soon. But then we'll just have a couple weeks, and then we'll have spring ball, and there'll be clips coming out, and people will be getting excited about who's playing where and all that good stuff. So can't wait for that. Now, the last thing I want to talk about here is going to kind of be a quick show. I got started a little late today, so I need to go a little quicker here. I want to talk about some players that I think could be potential breakout players for Ohio State in this 2024 season. I got two guys on defense, and then I got two guys on offense. So the first two guys I want to talk about are the guys on defense. One is someone that I feel like is a kind of a forgotten player that not a lot of people have been talking about recently, and that's Arvell Reese. Arvell Reese was a linebacker out of Glenville. I mean, you look at him, he looks like a freak athlete. And I heard that they were moving him to like the jack position or like defensive line, defensive end. But I don't know where I expect him to play. I just know that a guy like that with that athleticism, I hope that they find a way to get him on the field. And I hope that they put him in a position where he can use his athleticism. Comparing him to a guy like CJ Hicks, we haven't really seen him on the field much. I don't think that the way that Jim Knowles deploys his linebackers, or at least the way that he did in 2022 or 2023, sorry, I don't think that is going to suit a freak athlete very well, because at that point you're asking people to like read and react, you're asking people to like fill holes. But I want to see guys like CJ Hicks, guys like Arvell Reese put into positions where they can use their athleticism, come screaming off the edge, just put them in a spot to use their athleticism. I keep saying that over and over again, but that's how I feel about it. Like, we got all these freak athletes on the field, and we're not putting them out there in a position to succeed because you want them to be out there thinking instead of out there making a play and using their athleticism, like I said. I got Mark in the chat asked who's that, talking about Arvell Reese, I would imagine. Arvell Reese was a linebacker that we got. He was a true freshman last year. Look him up, man. He's a freak athlete, and one of them guys with kind of like that. What do they call it? Like that shit to him. He's kind of got that shit to him mentality. So I don't know, man. I think that he should have an impact on this team. I think that they need to put him in the right position. I don't know if that's linebacker or if that is like that defensive end slash jack position. Either way, get that kid on the field and let him go out there and do what he can do. And then moving on to the offensive side of the ball, I want to talk about Jelani Thurman. Jelani Thurman is another guy, and you'll notice kind of a trend with me that I want to see freak athletes on the field. You look at the other teams that are playing really well, that are dominating. They got freak athletes on the field, man. We got to figure out a way to get these guys out there. And Jelani Thurman is that. I think he's like 6'6", like 260, tight end, and coming out. I think he played with Aaron Noland at Georgia, or I'm sorry, he played with Aaron Noland in Georgia. But that's just another guy, man. You got to get him ready. Like if you guys get a chance, I think I talked about this yesterday. If you guys get a chance, go back and look at the Missouri game, and look at the very first play of the game. Look at number 15. It'll only take you a few seconds to find it on YouTube, and look at number 15 on the first play of the game, and watch him take a linebacker and take him completely off the field, basically blocking. That's what I want to see from him. I want to see him out there, and then also whenever he gets the ball thrown to him, he's shown that he has the ability to catch the ball. He has the ability to make plays with the ball in his hands. Get Jelani Thurman on the field. Let him develop into one of the best tight ends in college football, because honestly, I think that that's the kind of skill set that he has. We just have to use him properly and develop him properly. And then I want to go back to the defensive side of the ball for another guy here. I want to talk about defensive tackle Hero Kanu. That kid is a kid from Germany, I think it was, and he came to Ohio State. Nobody really talked about him too much, but when you watch him get on the field, he's one of those big, wide-body defensive tackles that can take up space and kind of manhandle guys. And with another year in the Ohio State training program, I expect him to take the next step and be like that really dominant defensive tackle. And honestly, like if you look at across the country, or not even across the country, just look in the Big Ten, the defensive tackles that people praise the most, the ones at Michigan, those are big, wide-body defensive tackles that are out there. They can push guys around. They can get around people because they're also athletic. Hero Kanu, to me, is going to be one of those guys. So watch out for Hero Kanu. I think he's number 93. When he did get in the game, you could see him like manhandling guys, getting out there making plays. And I think in the spring game last year, he kind of went crazy and had multiple sacks. So I know that the spring game stuff doesn't really matter, but watch out for Hero Kanu on the defensive side of the ball. And then on offense, I want to talk about, and this is maybe a stretch. It may be, it may not be. I want to talk about Jeremiah Smith, because I feel like with all the stuff that's been going on this offseason with Ohio State, a lot of people, myself included, have kind of forgot that Jeremiah Smith is coming here, or at least kind of stopped talking about it. And I know that Ohio State, they've had the best wide receivers, all that good stuff. But last year, the wide receiver unit as a whole was not phenomenal. I personally think that the wide receiver unit as a whole will be better in 2024 than it was in 23. And it's kind of not fair to say that, because they're not going to have Kyle McCord throwing to them. And maybe, Julian Fleming, Emeka Egbuka, Carnell Tate, maybe all those guys could have done more with a better quarterback. That's obviously possible. Marv got his. He did what he needed to do. But, obviously you're losing Marv, one of the best wide receiver prospects ever. I think that bringing back Emeka, taking away maybe addition by subtraction with sending Julian Fleming over to Penn State, and then having guys like Carnell Tate, Brandon Ennis, and then Jeremiah Smith step into that room, I think that this wide receiver unit is going to be really good. And I think that Jeremiah Smith has a place to play at Ohio State. There was a thing that just came out yesterday talking about how Jeremiah Smith was already like 6'3.5", 210 pounds. I mean, that's a college ready body. If Brian Hartline can just get him college ready mentally, I expect him to go out there and be an impact player starting week one. I don't expect him to start and play like every single rep, but I think that he's just one of those guys who is about his craft. He kind of, puts me in the mindset of like Caleb Downs. I talked yesterday about how Caleb Downs is just different. He's a football player. He looks like he was born to be a football player. He looks like he was supposed to be a football player. So Jeremiah Smith is that same way. He looks like he was built to be a college slash NFL wide receiver superstar. So that's the other guy I expect to have a breakout game or a breakout year. Sorry. Anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap the show up here, though, guys. I know that was kind of a quick show. Not a ton went on since yesterday when I did my last show, but I do want to kind of get back on track of going every day if I can. Because, like I said before, if my kids are home, I cannot be live, especially my youngest son. But when they're at school, I want to get on here. I want to talk to you guys. I want to get you some content out. So hit the like button, subscribe, and all that good stuff if you enjoy the show. Come back for content daily. But peace out, guys. Thank you for watching. You have a good day.